The digital age has certainly amplified the virtues of kindness and generosity. We often celebrate these traits as the pinnacle of good character. However, the Stoics, those ancient sages from Greece and Rome, would caution us to consider the balance in our acts of kindness. They understood that virtues, while inherently good, can become problematic if taken to excess. Here's the intriguing premise. Too much kindness might lead us into unexpected pitfalls. It might seem counterintuitive, but the Stoics believe that even the most virtuous traits need to be practiced in moderation. Generosity, while noble, can become a double-edged sword if we don't carefully navigate its limits. Let's explore 8 surprising ways that an overflow of kindness might backfire, drawing on the wisdom of Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. 1. Taking on too much. Taking on too much is a common trap in our quest to be kind, but the Stoics would argue that overcommitting is not only unwise, it can be self-destructive. Imagine you're at a gathering, and a friend casually mentions they're moving next weekend. Before you've even thought it through, your hand shoots up. I'll help. But deep down, you know you're already overwhelmed with your own commitments. That moment of good intention can easily become the beginning of a spiral. The Stoics believed in living in harmony with nature, and a key part of that is recognizing your own limits. Life, they would say, is like a teacup. Each promise and commitment is a drop of tea. If you pour in too much, the cup overflows, creating a mess. The act of saying yes to everything is not a sign of strength or virtue but a misunderstanding of your capacity. Overcommitting leads to stress, exhaustion, and a diluted presence in everything you do. Consider this: you've committed to helping a friend move, assisting at a school fair, attending a family event, and visiting your grandmother, all in one day. By the end, you're irritable, exhausted, and mentally absent in every activity. The Stoics would say you've failed, not by being unkind to others, but by being unkind to yourself. Their advice is simple: know the size of your cup, and don't pour more than you can hold. The intrigue lies in how easily overcommitment can masquerade as kindness. It feels noble to be the person who's always there for everyone. Yet, paradoxically, the more we take on, the less we're truly there for anyone. The Stoics teach that real wisdom is knowing when to say no, and to offer meaningful help within your limits. It's not selfish, it's sustainable. By doing less, you actually end up giving more. 2. Always trying to make everyone happy. Always trying to make everyone happy is a seductive trap, one that feels like kindness but often becomes a mask we wear to protect ourselves from discomfort. The Stoics would see this behavior not as virtuous, but as a subtle form of self-betrayal. After all, striving to be liked by everyone is like trying to grasp water. No matter how hard you try, it slips through your fingers. Imagine this scenario: you're at a gathering, and someone cracks a joke you don't find funny. You laugh along with everyone else. Later, a colleague voices an opinion you don't agree with, but you nod in silent approval. By the end of the day, you've worn so many different masks that you've forgotten which face is your own. The Stoics would ask, why bend yourself into shapes to fit others' expectations when their opinions are beyond your control? It's an exhausting game. Trying to keep everyone happy is not kindness, it's a performance, a delicate juggling act where each person's approval becomes another ball in the air. One slip, and it all comes crashing down. The irony is that this relentless pursuit of others' happiness often leads to personal discontent, anxiety, and a loss of authenticity. You end up compromising your values, suppressing your true feelings, and becoming someone you're not, all for fleeting nods of approval. Take Tim, for example. Tim was the guy everyone liked, always agreeable, always ready to accommodate. One day, a friend gave him a shirt he didn't like, but out of kindness, he wore it anyway. He spent the entire day feeling uncomfortable, yet his friend never even noticed the gesture. This highlights the Stoic wisdom: we can't control what others think, so why give up our authenticity for their fleeting approval? The intrigue here is that people-pleasing appears virtuous on the surface, but it's actually a form of enslavement. Stoicism teaches that true kindness lies in authenticity, in being your true self without bending to win the approval of others. By being authentic, you free yourself from the exhausting cycle of pleasing everyone, and paradoxically, the right people will respect and appreciate you more for it. The Stoics would argue that the real kindness is in allowing yourself the freedom to be genuine, rather than a mirror reflecting what others want to see. 3. Thinking you can change people. Thinking you can change people is a compelling illusion, often fueled by kindness and the belief that, with enough love, advice, or effort, we can steer someone toward the path we think is right for them. The Stoics would tell you this is a trap, one that not only fails to change others but also leads to frustration, disappointment, and a loss of inner peace. Picture this: you have a friend who repeatedly makes bad relationship choices. Time after time, you offer advice, lend a sympathetic ear, and even introduce them to people you think would be a better fit. Yet, they keep falling into the same toxic patterns, leaving you feeling helpless and exasperated. The Stoics would ask you to step back and reflect. Why are you so invested in controlling another person's journey? Here's the Stoic truth: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. People are on their own paths, and no amount of advice or kindness can force them to change unless they are ready. Stoicism teaches us that the only thing we have control over is our own actions and reactions, not the choices of others. This concept can be hard to swallow, especially when you care deeply about someone. But the desire to fix others often comes from our need to feel useful or in control, not from a place of genuine acceptance. Think of it like trying to sail someone else's ship. You may be on board, pointing them toward clear waters, but they're still holding the wheel. They can steer wherever they choose, even if it's toward the rocks. Stoicism tells us that trying to change the course of another person's life is not only futile but also a recipe for emotional shipwreck. The intrigue lies in how this belief, rooted in kindness, actually chains us to frustration. The more we push, the more we suffer when the change doesn't happen. Stoicism urges us to let go of the illusion of control and embrace a deeper form of kindness, respecting someone else's autonomy. Instead of trying to change them, the Stoics would advise us to support them on their journey while focusing on our own inner growth. When you release the need to fix people, you find a freedom that allows you to love them as they are, flaws and all. And in this, you also discover that true peace comes not from controlling others, but from accepting what lies beyond your control. 4. Letting others use you. Letting others use you is one of the quietest dangers of excessive kindness. At first, it feels noble to always say yes, to be the one others rely on, but over time, this generosity can turn into something more sinister: exploitation. The Stoics would caution against this. Allowing yourself to be used not only drains your resources, but erodes your sense of self-worth. Imagine Lucy from The Office, who always brings homemade treats. In the beginning, her colleagues are full of gratitude, but soon it becomes an unspoken expectation. One day, Lucy forgets to bring something, and instead of the usual smiles, she's met with murmurs of disappointment. What began as a kind gesture has become a burden, leaving her feeling unappreciated and resentful. The Stoics would ask, how did Lucy lose control over her own kindness? The answer lies in the subtle shift from voluntary generosity to obligatory servitude. When we repeatedly offer ourselves without boundaries, people start to expect it, and their appreciation dwindles. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's greatest thinkers, would remind us that we should do good without attachment to praise or thanks, but also with the wisdom to know when our kindness is being exploited. The Stoics champion the idea of balance, and here's where it becomes crucial: kindness is a gift, not a limitless well. The intrigue lies in how easily this exploitation can creep into our lives. It starts with a small favor, a yes to a harmless request. Then another, and another, until suddenly, your time, energy, and even emotions are being siphoned away. The Stoics would see this as a kind of internal slavery, not because others are cruel, but because you haven't set the necessary boundaries. Stoicism teaches that true kindness is not about being endlessly available but about knowing when to say no and protecting your inner peace. To be consistently kind to others, you must first be kind to yourself. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, often emphasized that you can't pour from an empty cup, meaning, if you allow others to deplete you, you will eventually have nothing left to give. To reclaim your power, the Stoics would advise you to set firm boundaries, to recognize when your generosity is no longer a choice but an expectation. This doesn't make you less kind. In fact, it makes your kindness more meaningful. It's a reminder that being a good person doesn't mean letting others take advantage of you. It means giving from a place of strength, not depletion. 5. Neglecting yourself. Neglecting yourself in the pursuit of kindness can feel virtuous. After all, isn't it noble to prioritize others' needs over your own? The Stoics, however, would warn against this self-sacrifice, teaching that by neglecting your own well-being, you not only harm yourself but also diminish your ability to truly help others. In Stoic terms, it's like trying to light the world with a candle that's burning at both ends. Eventually, the flame will flicker out. Imagine yourself as a ship navigating stormy seas. You're so focused on helping everyone else stay afloat that you fail to notice the cracks forming in your own hull. You bail out water for others, but who's keeping your ship from sinking? The Stoics would urge you to remember that if you're not seaworthy, you'll be of no help to anyone in the long run. Consider the example of Alex, a friend who was always there for everyone. He'd lend a hand to anyone in need, stay up late to offer advice, and never said no to a request. But over time, Alex began to wear down. He became irritable, exhausted, and unappreciated, feeling more like a resource than a person. One day he snapped, and in his burnout, he could no longer be there for anyone, including himself. This is what the Stoics would call a violation of nature, living out of harmony with your own limits. The intriguing part of neglecting yourself is how quietly it happens. At first, it feels like strength, like you're being a hero by always putting others first. But slowly, without realizing it, you begin to crumble. The Stoics would ask you to pause and reflect. How can you serve others if you neglect the most important person, yourself? Self-care, from a Stoic perspective, isn't indulgence, it's responsibility. Marcus Aurelius believed that taking care of your mind and body was essential for fulfilling your duties in life. You are like a finely tuned instrument, and if you don't maintain yourself, your ability to function will falter. In neglecting yourself, you're not just doing harm to you, but to those who rely on you. It's a paradox. The more you give to others without taking time to replenish, the less you have to give. The Stoics believe that moderation and balance are key. Just as you cannot pour from an empty cup, you cannot be a source of strength for others when you've drained all your reserves. True kindness, according to Stoicism, begins with making sure your own foundation is solid. Only then can you stand strong enough to lift others up. By caring for yourself, you embody the Stoic ideal of harmony with nature, living in alignment with your needs, while being of genuine service to others. Stoicism teaches that self-neglect is not a virtue, it's a path to burnout and bitterness. The real strength lies in knowing when to rest, when to say no, and when to nurture your own soul so that you can continue to serve others from a place of abundance rather than depletion. 6. Avoiding disagreements. Avoiding disagreements might seem like the easiest route to peace, but in reality, it's a slow-burning fuse leading to greater conflict. The Stoics would argue that avoiding confrontation out of fear of discomfort, or in the name of kindness, isn't kindness at all. It's a denial of truth, both to yourself and to others. By sidestepping disagreements, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're also evading growth, honesty, and genuine connection. Imagine you're living with a roommate who consistently leaves dirty dishes in the sink. Day after day, you bite your tongue, telling yourself that it's not worth the trouble to bring it up. You think you're being kind by not making waves, but what's really happening? Beneath the surface, frustration simmers, resentment builds, and eventually, a minor annoyance transforms into a major grievance. One day you snap, not about the dishes, but over something trivial, and the explosion leaves everyone confused. The Stoics would say this is precisely what happens when we choose to avoid difficult conversations instead of confronting them with courage and clarity. The intrigue lies in the paradox. Avoiding disagreements may feel like preserving peace, but it's often planting the seeds of discord. The Stoics would remind us that true peace doesn't come from silence or avoidance. It comes from confronting challenges head-on, with wisdom and emotional control. Marcus Aurelius, for example, believed that we should approach conflict calmly, without being swayed by anger or emotion. Disagreement isn't the enemy, it's an opportunity for understanding and growth. By avoiding disagreements, you're depriving both yourself and the other person of a chance to find a deeper truth. It's like trying to paint over a crack in the wall. It might look smooth on the surface, but the damage underneath continues to grow. In Stoicism, one of the core virtues is courage. The courage to speak up, the courage to stand by your values, and the courage to engage in difficult conversations, knowing they are necessary for real harmony. Take, for example, a workplace scenario where your colleague keeps taking credit for your ideas. You don't say anything, thinking it's the nice thing to do, but each time it happens, your sense of injustice grows. The Stoics would argue that by avoiding this confrontation, you're not only compromising your integrity but also allowing a situation to persist that's harmful to both you and your colleague. Kindness, in its truest form, isn't about making everyone feel comfortable. It's about confronting the uncomfortable in a way that benefits all. Stoicism teaches that conflict, when approached with reason and restraint, can be transformative. It's not about picking fights or becoming confrontational. It's about addressing issues before they fester. Epictetus would say that disagreements are not inherently bad, it's how we handle them that determines the outcome. Instead of letting resentment simmer, approach the situation with calm reasoning. Express your perspective, listen to the other person, and seek a resolution that honors both your truth and theirs. Avoiding disagreements might seem like you're keeping the peace, but in truth, you're delaying the inevitable, sacrificing honesty for a fragile and temporary harmony. The Stoics encourage us to face these moments, not with aggression, but with courage, clarity, and the desire for mutual understanding. Only through this can we achieve lasting peace, both within ourselves and in our relationships with others. 7. Giving too much can seem like a noble pursuit, but in the world of Stoicism, it's a subtle trap. At first, generosity feels like a virtue, a way to make the world a better place. Yet, as with all things, the Stoics warn that virtue, when taken to excess, can become a vice. Giving too much isn't just about depleting your resources, it's about sacrificing balance and wisdom. What happens when generosity turns into self-sabotage? Picture Sarah, a woman with a heart as big as the world, always ready to lend a hand, share her time, and give money to friends in need. For a while, it feels fulfilling. She's the go-to person, admired for her kindness. But gradually, her giving becomes more than just a gesture of goodwill. It starts to drain her. She lends out money that she can't afford to lose, spends energy she doesn't have, and overcommits her time. When she hits her own financial troubles, the friends she helped are nowhere to be found. In her zeal to be generous, she has inadvertently bankrupted her own well-being. The Stoics believed in moderation, the golden mean between too much and too little. Seneca, one of Stoicism's great minds, would remind us that it's not enough to give, you must give wisely. He wrote that true generosity is not about emptying yourself, it's about balancing your resources in a way that is sustainable. Giving too much is like pouring water from a jug without checking how much is left. Eventually, the jug runs dry, and then what? The intrigue of overgenerosity lies in its deceptive nature. It feels good at first, you're making a difference, helping others, and being the hero. But what happens when you've given so much that you're left with nothing for yourself? When does it cross the line from being kind to being reckless with your own well-being? The Stoics would argue that the key to true generosity is knowing your limits. Marcus Aurelius might remind us that you must first govern yourself before you can serve others effectively. If you're constantly giving beyond your means, you are not practicing wisdom. You're allowing others to drain your energy, your time, and your resources without considering the long-term consequences. Consider also the expectations that grow from constant giving. The more you give, the more others come to expect it from you. Suddenly, your generosity isn't seen as a gift but as an obligation. Your acts of kindness become unnoticed until the moment you stop, and then comes disappointment or resentment. The Stoics would view this as a breakdown of proper boundaries. Giving, without limits or discernment, doesn't just harm you, it creates an imbalance in your relationships. The people you once supported may start to rely on you too much, expecting you to always be there, without realizing that you, too, have needs and limits. So, what is the Stoic answer to giving too much? Balance. Be generous, but not to the point of self-destruction. Epictetus would counsel that your duty is to live according to nature, which includes understanding your own limits. Your generosity should flow from a place of strength, not depletion. A true act of kindness, in Stoic terms, is one that doesn't sacrifice your own well-being in the process. To give wisely is to understand that you can do more good when you maintain your own resources, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. Giving is a virtue, but wisdom is its necessary counterpart. The Stoics teach us that it's not just about how much we give, but how mindfully we do so. By knowing when to give and when to hold back, you preserve both your own well-being and the integrity of your relationships. After all, true generosity is sustainable. It doesn't empty you. It empowers you to keep giving from a place of abundance, not scarcity. 8. Needing others' approval. Needing others' approval is like chasing shadows. No matter how fast you run, it always seems just out of reach. The Stoics would argue that this relentless pursuit of external validation is one of the greatest obstacles to inner peace and freedom. In a world where likes, followers, and applause are often mistaken for genuine value, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters, living in accordance with your own principles, not someone else's opinions. Imagine you're standing on a stage, performing for an audience whose faces you can't quite see. You don't know who they are, but their applause dictates your every move. When they cheer, you feel elated. When they're silent, doubt creeps in. This is the trap of seeking approval. Your worth becomes tethered to the fickle reactions of others, leaving you at their mercy. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, would urge you to step off that stage altogether, reminding you that true fulfillment comes from within, not from the applause of a faceless crowd. The intrigue in this struggle lies in its subtlety. It doesn't always feel like you're seeking approval, does it? Perhaps you're just posting a thoughtful message on social media, or wearing that new jacket because someone complimented it last time. These actions seem harmless, even routine. But when you start bending your life to fit the expectations or judgments of others, you lose the essence of who you are. The Stoics believe that this is one of the greatest dangers of all, not just because it diminishes your authenticity, but because it leaves your happiness in the hands of others, which you can never control. Consider the wisdom of Epictetus, who famously taught that the only things within our control are our own thoughts, actions, and responses. Everything else, including the opinions of others, is beyond our grasp. Why, then, do we put so much stock in what others think? Why do we let their approval, or lack of it, shape our sense of self-worth? Epictetus would tell you that chasing after others' approval is like trying to control the wind. You'll never succeed, and you'll exhaust yourself in the process. There's a deeper irony here, one the Stoics would be quick to point out. The more you seek approval, the less authentic you become, and in losing that authenticity, you're likely to lose the very approval you seek. People are drawn to those who are secure in themselves, who live with conviction. Think about the times you've admired someone for their confidence, not because they conformed to what others wanted, but because they lived true to their own values. The Stoics knew that integrity and self-respect were far more valuable than any fleeting applause. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, had perhaps the most profound perspective on this. As one of the most powerful men in history, you might think he would be deeply concerned with public opinion. Yet in his Meditations he writes, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." This simple statement cuts to the heart of Stoicism. Stop worrying about how others perceive you and focus on being the person you aspire to be. Let your actions speak for themselves, not for the approval of others, but because they are rooted in your own principles. So, how do you break free from this endless cycle of needing others' approval? Start by realizing that you don't need it, not for your happiness, not for your self-worth, and certainly not for your integrity. The Stoics would advise you to shift your focus inward. Cultivate your own judgment, grounded in virtue, and let that be your guide. Approval from others might come as a side effect, but it should never be your goal. In the end, Stoicism teaches that real freedom comes when you stop caring about others' approval and start living for what you know to be right. Approval is transient, but your principles are yours to hold forever. By turning inward and seeking validation only from your own conscience, you become truly powerful, immune to the opinions of others, standing firm in the knowledge that you are enough as you are, regardless of who's watching. And there you have it, the winding road of kindness, full of unexpected twists and turns. In an era of likes, shares, and endless scrolling, it's easy to lose sight of the age-old wisdom of the Stoics. Their teachings remain as relevant today as they were centuries ago, reminding us to balance our virtues with practical wisdom. As we reach this crossroads of reflection and action, I encourage you to share your experiences in the comments. Have you ever found yourself tangled in the complexities of excessive kindness? Your stories and insights are what enrich our Stoic community, guiding and inspiring fellow travelers on this path of life. If you've enjoyed this exploration, show your support by hitting the like button, subscribing, and tapping the notification bell. Don't miss out on our next dive into Stoic wisdom. Until then, remember to be kind, be wise, and always stay true to yourself. For more Stoic insights, select one of the videos on your screen now. Cheerio!